All right, welcome, welcome. If you are new here, I am so glad you came to join us, and I hope you find this to be a really good use of your time. If you've been here before, welcome back. Like I always say, Fridays are my favorite time because we just get to talk to people who are really engaged in improving their firm and their processes. If you are watching on YouTube, go to the description, grab the handout for this session, and Beth, will you drop the handout?
Oh,
Um,
sure.
so you can follow along. And if this kind of legal technology is helpful, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos on legal technology talk. All right, so our goal, and in just a minute, you'll see in the chat that a handout will drop in there. You can grab that and follow along. So our goal is never to make your firm feel more complicated or heavy. The goal is to help your software do the heavy lifting so your team has better information, better follow up, and fewer things falling through the cracks. And then, most importantly, that you can do the things that only a human can do. Because, like we always say, let a robot do what a robot can do, and a human do what only a human can do. That's why you're in the firm, because you brought human skills to add to the firm's success. So, today we're talking about intake reporting and are you tracking the numbers that matter? Whoops. Come on, there we go. So I want to start with the thing that I think a lot of firms miss, and that's reports are not supposed to be decoration. And they're not supposed to be pretty dashboard that everyone looks at once a month or quickly reference in your weekly team meetings or stakeholder meetings. And then it immediately goes back to doing everything the same way. A good report should make something obvious. It should tell you what is working and what is leaking and where the firm is losing opportunities, which of course is cash on the table. So the way I want you to think about this today is really simple. Your reports are not a scoreboard in the way that we're going to talk about them today, they're a leak detector. A scoreboard tells you the final score. How many leads came in? How many consults were scheduled? How much revenue came in? That's really useful, but it's not enough. A leak detector tells you where the opportunity disappeared. Did the lead never get called? Did the consult never get scheduled? Did the person no show? Did they have a consult but never get followed up with after? Did they say they hired someone else because your firm waited too long? Or did a source look good because it brought in a lot of leads, but those leads never turned into signed clients? So today I want to walk through the beginner numbers every firm should be tracking, but I do not want this to feel like a math class. This is not about turning your firm into a data science project. This is about giving your firm enough visibility to stop guessing because guessing is expensive and guessing makes you blame the wrong thing. Guessing makes you say our marketing is not working when maybe the issue is that nobody called the lead for 2 days. Guessing makes you say that referral source is amazing, but then maybe they send nice people who rarely hire or who hire at a much lower rate. Guessing makes you say intake is doing fine when half the open leads have no next step or automations to ensure they're followed up with and taken care of. So let's start with the beginner numbers. The first number is new leads by source. Where did the leads come from? Google, referral, website, seminar, Facebook, Avo, current client, professional referral, whatever your categories are. And this one sounds really basic, but it's foundational. If you do not know where your leads are coming from, you cannot know what is working. And I would rather see a firm track this imperfectly than not track it at all. Start simple. You can clean it up later. When you say it has to be perfect, then you never start because it's overwhelming. Throw perfect out the window for now. It's completely okay. The second number is speed to lead. How long did it take your firm to respond after the person reached out? And this is one of those numbers that can create a real light bulb moment because a firm may think they have a lead quality problem, but what they actually have is a response time problem. The person filled out a form at 9 a.m., your firm called back at 3:30 p.m., and by then, they've already talked to two other firms, set up a consultation, and possibly met with them over Zoom. They're gone. That is not a bad lead. That is a missed window. and that is a process problem. Number two, or I'm sorry, number three. Um, the third number is lead to consult rate. Of the people who reached out, how many actually scheduled a consultation? This helps you see whether your intake process is moving people forward. If this number is low, you may have a lead quality issue, but you may also have an intake script issue, a pricing conversion issue, a delayed response issue, or a follow up issue. But you can't dial that in if you don't get that number. The fourth number is a consult show rate. And right next to that is no show rate. These are two sides of the same issue. If people schedule but do not show up, that tells you something. Maybe the consult is too far out. Maybe confirmation reminders are weak. Maybe you're not sending confirmations or reminders at all. I'm going to give you a little freebie here. For consults, we always like to send a text and an email. If it's in person, we like to send it 2 hours with the address. If it's on Zoom or video conference, we like to send it 10 to 15 minutes before. Because even an hour, somebody can start doing something and forget. You'll notice a big decrease in your no-show rate. But maybe nobody is setting expectations, and maybe they did not understand the value of the consultation. Maybe they booked with 3 firms and showed up for the one that confirmed the fastest and sounded the most organized. And I'll let you know that currently in Lawmatics, we can track scheduled consultations and canceled consultations. We're working on getting a way to automate no-show rates. But don't let that stop you. You can do that on a spreadsheet for now. Get your numbers. The fifth number is a consult to hire rate. Once somebody actually meets with the attorney or whoever's doing the consultation, how often do they hire? This is where you can start seeing whether the problem is before the consultation or after the consultation. If lead to consult is strong and show rate is strong, but consult to hire is weak, that tells you something different than if people are never making it to the consult in the first place. And you can even dial it in by each person who's conducting the meeting to see who may need coaching and who's getting bad leads and things like that. The sixth number is lost reason. This is one of the most important numbers that you'll have, but it only works if your team uses it honestly and consistently. Not hired is not a lost reason. Went with another firm, too expensive, not ready, could not reach, outside practice area, bad fit, conflict of interest, needed faster appointment. Those are more useful. The goal is not to shame anyone. The goal is to learn what is actually happening. And then you can tie that to your marketing strategies and see why people are calling from specific campaigns and thinking you do so and so service when you don't. There's a lot of information you can gain from lost reasons. The seventh number is follow-up completion rate. If your process said someone should get a follow-up call, email, task, or text, did it actually happen? This is a behavior number in some cases, but there are automations that handle this. So it tells you whether the process you designed is the process that's happening in real life. A lot of firms have a follow-up plan in theory. The report tells you whether that plan is actually being completed. In Lawmatics, we have this in our reporting that we implement. It is so dialed in that it tells you even which specific follow-up produced consultations and hires. So you can see why number 3 email is triggering people to want to schedule a meeting, and maybe you can dial in 1 and 2 to make it happen faster. The eighth number is revenue by source. This is where a lot of firms have another light bulb moment because lead volume and revenue are not the same thing. A source that brings in 40 leads and 2 hires may not be better than a source that brings in 8 leads and 5 hires. And even then, 5 hires at a low average value may not be better than 2 hires at a high average value. That got a little technical. But you need to know not just where the leads come from, but what those leads eventually become. And you can't strictly say this has a 3% higher rate from 100 leads because maybe only 5 of them scheduled, but 3 hired. That's not bad, depending on the money you collect and the spend you did on that marketing campaign to get them in. It's not black and white, but you can't dive in until you have the numbers. And then I would add one bonus beginner number: open leads with no next step. This is what we call the danger zone, the yield sign, the big flashing red lights. These are people sitting in your system where nobody knows what is supposed to happen next. No task, no appointment, no follow up, no close status, no lost reason, just floating. And if you want a number that will immediately show your leaks, this is one of the best places to look. In a manual system, this will absolutely kill your revenue every month. In an automated system, this can be fixed and run on its own, so it's rarely an issue. It's one less thing on your plate while your clients are still being well taken care of in a very meaningful way. So now let's make this real. Imagine in an estate planning firm that is frustrated with Google ad leads. The attorney says, "These leads are terrible. They never hire. We're spending money and getting nothing." And on the surface, it sounds true. The firm had 35 Google ad leads last month and only 3 hired. So the easy conclusion is Google is bad, cancel the ad campaigns. But then we look closer. Of those 35 leads, 12 were not contacted until the next day. Another 8 were only called once, but no second attempt was ever made. Several people scheduled consults, but there was no consistent confirmation and reminder process. A few no-showed and nobody followed up afterwards. A few had consults, said they needed to talk to their spouse, and then there was no task created for anyone to check back in. So ask then, were the leads bad, or did we let things fall through the cracks? And this should be a light bulb moment because Google ads were not the problem. The source may have been fine. The pipe was leaking in this case. And this is why the right numbers matter. If the only report you look at is leads by source and hires by source, you might cut off Google and think you solved the problem. But if you look at speed to lead, which is how fast you call them back, follow-up completion, no-show rate, and open leads with no next step, you realize the better first move may be fixing the intake process. The firm does not need to start by rewriting its entire marketing strategy. It needs to respond faster. It needs a clearer follow-up sequence. It needs consult confirmations. It needs lost reasons. It needs consistent reminders. It needs someone watching the open leads that have gone quiet. This is completely different solution than our leads are bad. Until your leaks are plugged, then your numbers become more difficult to understand the true case. And I do want to reference a few weeks ago, we did an open coaching session on drip campaigns and the value in them. And I would encourage you to watch that if you haven't seen that yet. So now the next one, imagine another firm that loves a particular referral source. Maybe it's a financial advisor or professional growth partner or someone in the community who has been sending people for years referring to your firm. Everyone likes this source. The lead feels warm. They mention the referral partner's name. The calls are pleasant. The attorney has a good relationship there. So emotionally, everyone thinks this is one of our best sources. That's the emotional attachment instead of the analytical approach. Because the firms start tracking the numbers, they look at lead to consult, consult show rate, consult to hire, and lost reasons and revenue by source. Then they realize something surprising. That source sends a decent number of leads, but none are actually ready or can afford, and nobody hires you. There's a slew of reasons. A lot of them are price shopping. Some are outside the firm's ideal client profile. They show up and they are friendly, but the average case value is lower or non-existent, and the hire rate is weaker than expected. At the same time, the firm has another source that nobody talks about much because it's not exciting. Maybe it's organic website traffic. Maybe it's a niche landing page that you thought, oh, I'll just do that, but it's not doing anything for me. Maybe it's a smaller professional relationship. It brings in fewer leads, but those leads show up, they hire faster, and they produce strong revenue. And your lead to close or lead to hire Hired is close to 90%. That is a valuable source. And that's another light bulb moment. The source that feels best is not always the source that performs best. And the source that looks quiet may actually be one of the most valuable, and then can make you think if you want to refine that source to make it do even better or meet more with that referral source. Are you whining and dining the wrong professional referral partners because maybe they're not hiring? And maybe you need to go and have an expectation meeting with them saying, some people are confused. Let's just have a meeting and reset expectations. So, again, this is not about embarrassing anyone or saying someone's favorite referral partner is bad. It's about knowing the truth because that is wasted time in the conference room that many law firms can't afford to do. Because once you know the truth, you can make better decisions. Maybe you keep that referral source, but you adjust expectations, like I said. Have a conversation with them or adjust the marketing strategy messaging. Maybe you give the referral partner better language so they send better fit people. Maybe you let the referral professional source go through your process at no cost and then let them rave about it with a clear understanding of what you do and how you work with clients. Maybe you invest more in the quiet source that is actually producing revenue. And maybe you stop treating all leads as equal because they absolutely are not. And that's the real point here. All leads are not equal, all sources are not equal, and all reports are not equally useful. So when you look at your reporting, I want you to stop asking only how many leads did we get? It's not a bad question, but it's a beginner question. The better question is how many leads did we get and where did the opportunity fall out? If the leads came in but never scheduled, that's one kind of leak. If they scheduled but no showed, that's another kind of leak. If they showed up but did not hire, that's another. If they wanted to hire but nobody followed up, that is painful because that one was preventable, especially with firms that are having cash flow issues right now. If the source brings in a ton of leads but no revenue, that is a marketing decision. And if a source brings in fewer leads but better clients, that is a strategy decision. And that's why your reports should lead to action. A good report should almost um, always point at the next step for you, not just be something you read once a week and say, oh, and then put it back in a stack of papers on your desk. It should lead to action. If speed to lead is slow, tighten the response process. If no shows are high, improve confirmations and expectations. If lost reasons are vague, clean up your lost reason list and train the team to use it. A freebie is have a standard list of lost reasons for them to select and then an additional field to type something custom as well. So you can dial it in, but you can also report on standard information. This will give you better reporting to analyze and see trends. If follow-up completion is weak, build better automations. If revenue by source does not match lead volume, adjust your marketing decision. Have your marketing meeting every week with the marketing team you use, or if it's in-house, but you should be meeting every week using these reports. If open leads have no next step, clean that up immediately because those are active leaks and costing you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. When we took on one firm as a client, we looked at their system and found almost 2,900 leads that weren't followed up with. They were just sitting there and nothing was happening. So we worked with them and we got them to set up a campaign to send out, and it was a big drip campaign. And they brought in almost $250,000 from that simple touch to catch up on follow-ups in one swoop. That is a law firm's dream. But we found the leak and plugged it, and we got them back on track so it wouldn't happen again. And I will let you know this firm was having cash flow issues. So they were very, very shocked and really frustrated when they saw that that was happening. And they didn't know what was going on in their firm because they weren't seeing reports. And I want to make this very doable because I do not want anyone leaving here thinking they need to build a giant reporting system today because you don't. You start with a really small audit. So here's your do today step. Pull 10 recent leads, not 100, not the whole year, just 10. For each one, answer these questions, and these are on the handout. Who is the source? Do we know how fast we responded? Did they schedule a consult? Did they show up? Did they hire? If they did not hire, do we know the lost reason? Was every promised follow up completed? And does that lead have a clear final status or next step? And again, that's in your handout. This one exercise will tell you a lot. You can discover the team is doing better than you thought. You may discover the data is too messy to trust. You may discover that people are entering sources inconsistently. And you may discover that lost reasons are basically useless right now. You may discover that several leads are still open with no next step. Good. That is not a failure. That is visibility. Excuse me. And when you have visibility, you have a path to improve because you cannot fix what you cannot see. The first time you see a report, we see it all the time. Excuse me. People are shocked and they argue the numbers are wrong when really that's just what the system is showing. So it could be garbage in data, and then you get garbage out, or it could be missing information. It could be a whole plethora of reasons. But this is where tools like Lawmatics can be incredibly helpful, but only if the system is set up to answer the right questions. Custom fields, matter statuses, pipeline stages, tasks, automations, forms, tags, and reports all need to work together and talk to each other. If your team is entering data one way on Monday and another way on Tuesday and a different way on Thursday, your reports are going to lie to you, or you can um, or they can show you that is happening quickly before it gets to be a real issue. You can spot it very quickly. Not because the software is bad, but because the process is unclear. So the goal is not just more reports. The goal is better intake architecture that feels better reports or that feeds better reports and gives you real actionable information. You want a system where the important information is captured as part of the normal workflow, not as an extra chore somewhere that somebody has to remember. Sources should be captured early. Statuses should be clear. Follow up should be assigned. Lost reasons should be easy to choose. Consult outcomes should be tracked, and revenue should connect back to the source when possible. That is when reporting starts to become useful. Not when it gives you more numbers, but when it gives you better decision making numbers. So here's the key takeaways. First, your reports are not a scoreboard, they are a leak detector. Do not just ask how many leads came in, ask where the opportunity fell out and why. Second, start with the beginner numbers: source, speed to lead, lead to consult, show rate, no show rate, consult to hire, lost reason, follow up completion, revenue by source, and open leads with no next step. And third, do not blame a source until you have checked the process. A lead source may look bad because your response time follow up or confirmation process is leaking. Fourth, do not trust a source just because it feels good. A warm referral source may feel great and still underperform when you look at higher rate and revenue. And fifth, pick 10 recent leads today and audit them. That is your starting point. We're not looking for perfection, just visibility. So if you do that and realize your firm has data everywhere but not clear answers, that is exactly the kind of thing we can help with. We help firms make Lawmatics and their intake systems actually work and show what is happening, where things are leaking, and what needs to be fixed first. And of course, it also shows what is working well, so you don't keep trying to tackle a problem that isn't a problem. Reporting the right things sometimes means cleaning up statuses, messes, things like that. Sometimes it means building better automations. Sometimes it means better reporting. Sometimes it means just simplifying the whole process so the team will actually use it. So if your reports are full of data but short on answers, schedule a free discovery call with us. We can look at where you are, what you're trying to track and accomplish, and what would make the biggest difference first. So, Beth, before we wrap up, this is kind of up your alley. So, I'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah, reporting is definitely up my alley and finding new ways to report things and new things to be able to pull out and to be able to track. The thing that I want to emphasize the most is if you have an automated system like Lawmatics, you should not be putting things in there to track that is going to cause more work for someone. Now, in some cases, you can't avoid that, but really thinking through that and being able to say, is there a way to track this without, um, you know, causing someone else to be able to or need to put in data? Um, So a good example of this is kind of what we do with our follow-up tracking. Like that is an automation. That automation runs, the automation actually keeps track of how many times that person was contacted through that automation. The thing is that your automation needs to match your process and people need to do the process. Because if you step out of that process and you get away from that, then those numbers don't mean anything anymore because you're doing things that aren't in there or not doing things or whatever else. So, really, it's all about consistency and it's about getting there, and keeping things consistent. And also, Alex had asked, like, what is the benchmark data? Like what is good for a lead to consult to hired? That is so hard to answer because all of the different um practice areas across law, it's all different. So there's no like real nice, consistent answer to that. A conversion rate of 50% across the industry is considered acceptable. But if you have a built out process in estate planning where you're filtering out those and only grabbing qualified leads into consultations, and you're doing workshops before they get to a consultation, so you're dealing with educated clients, 50% is awful. Like, um, so it's really hard to like dial that in and say this is what it is because it varies. It varies across. And really the best way to approach that is not to say, how am I compared to other law firms, but how am I doing? What is the waste in my firm itself? What's my conversion rate right now? Do I even know what that is? And you would be surprised how many times that we've talked to firms and asked them what their conversion rate is. And I remember one specifically, he was very firm that his conversion rate was 80%. And we put the tracking in and we put the reports in and everything else. And the reports came up and his conversion rate was 45%. And he sat there and argued with me. And we went through matter by matter for the past 2 months. And his conversion rate was 45% because like they didn't know the number. And then he's like, okay, now I need to work on this because he realized that, oh, this is actually where I'm at. Where I thought I was is not where I was. So, um, that really knowing those numbers are very important and knowing where you're at is more important. Where you're at and where you want to go is more important than knowing where you are on the average of all the other firms. Because it really doesn't matter. They're not you. They're completely different. And what are you going to do? If the national average is 50%, are you going to be happy with 55? Because why are you happy with 55? Like, why wouldn't you want to get that up to 95? You're saving half of your time. Yeah. So in the grand scheme of things of how you are in national, it really doesn't matter. It really matters where you're at now and knowing those numbers now and knowing what to do. And the one thing that really does come across in this is having that report, being able to look at those numbers, being able to go into that. And if you don't have that, that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that because I really like how you said that. Um, I'm sure there are national benchmarks, and we see
Yeah.
people at a true 95% conversion rate, and we see some firms at like 18%.
Correct.
So when you start comparing other firms, even if it's a national average. That doesn't help you because if you surpass a national average, then what do you do? Just stop? So I always like to look at it is compete with yourself. My very first job was at um, a fast food restaurant when I was much younger. And my boss, and I thought it was really quirky and kind of weird at the time, but it's really kind of shaped into what I do now. He used to walk up to me and he would do this to everybody and he would ask, "Are you doing better today than you were yesterday?" And it's actually really powerful because you're gauging where was I and where am I today? Am I 1% better today than I was yesterday? So I think that's a really good way to gauge your own successes is gauge it against yourself. Because if you start going against other firms, you're going to get frustrated, overwhelmed. Sometimes you start thinking you're a failure, and you don't need to do that. Just compete with yourself. Be the best firm that you guys can be and offer your and always offer and honor your signature client experience to every client, and the successes will come. And just start asking yourself, are we better today than we were yesterday? All right. So before we wrap this up and go into open Q&A, just a quick note for anyone watching on YouTube. We always stop the recording here and then we open it up for live Q&A. That part is not recorded so people can ask real questions and talk through real situations. So if you want to be a part of that conversation, we do this live every Friday at noon Eastern. It's free and the link to join is always in the description.
Except for this summer when it's every other week.
Correct. Over the summer, it is the second and fourth week of every month through Labor Day.
Yeah.